Welcome to the Storycraft Society. It feels like I just made a billion dungeon tiles.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Garmin, and we are going to continue working on our Lost Mine of Phandelver build this week with the REDBRAND Hideout. Now, this is actually going to take place over the next 4 weeks, where we build through this dungeon complex with dungeon tiles, cave tiles, and a bunch of cool scatter stuff. But this week, we're talking about dungeon tiles. So a long time ago, I actually built dungeon tiles based off of the Blackmagic Craft dungeon tile. It's a 3x3 with these awesome tall walls, and they look really great. The one problem that I've found with them is that if you're a player on the far side of the table, it's really hard to see in behind these taller walls. So in this build, I wanted to fix that and make myself a new set. So I came up with these, which are a much lower profile wall, but you still get all the cool like brick and all that sort of thing. One thing that I do want to add is that I did have to edit the layout of the REDBRAND Hideout a little bit because all these tiles are in a 3x3 system. So I actually made a layout template for anybody who wants it, and I put that up on Thru RPG, so you can head over to the Storycraft Society page over there and get that if you want. It's set up as pay what you want, so just grab it and you can start crafting with me. So with nothing else to say, let's get into building some dungeon tiles. All right, so for our dungeon tiles, we're gonna need a materials list of XPS insulation foam core you can get from the dollar store, white glue, Blackmagic Craft base coat, various craft paints, paint brushes, a tinfoil ball, and a hobby knife. We're going to start this project by cutting XPS insulation foam into blocks that are 3x3. Then we're going to cut them down into the tiles, which are actually going to be a 1/2 inch thick. So the tiles each will be 3 inch by 3 inch by 1/2 inch thick. Now I am using a Proxxon hot wire table for this. This is not a job that requires this tool. You could do it with an Olfa knife. You just have to go a little slower and take your time. I'm just using the hot wire table because it speeds up my process and makes it go a little faster for me. All right, now that we're ready for our bricks, we're gonna be using the cheap dollar store foam core. You can always tell it's the cheap stuff because the paper just peels right off. It's not glued on very well. And the thing that I like about this stuff for doing bricks is it's already the thickness that I personally like for bricks. So I only have to worry about cutting the other 2 measurements. So for example, I now cut 1/2 inch strips, and you actually see that I'm showing the texturing tool. I'll get to that in a minute. But then we're gonna take those 1/2 inch strips and then cut them down into 3/8 sections. And then I'm just gonna drop them right into that bucket that I've got over there. And what I'm gonna do is actually tumble the bricks with the stones in there to texture them all the way through. It's a lot faster than trying to individually texture each brick, which would just be maddening, or gluing them all on and then trying to texture them after, which makes it hard to texture down into the little crevices. But we're gonna make a lot of bricks. Once we're done with our 1/2 inch by 3/8 bricks, then we're gonna take this outside and tumble it. After you've given the bricks a good shake, they will have nice rock texture all over them to really make them look good. And then now you're gonna take your finished stack of dungeon tiles, and we're gonna start making the tiles be ready for bricks. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna cut a tic-tac-toe pattern into the tops of each of the tiles. So what I'm doing is just cutting 1 inch by 1 inch lines the whole way across, eventually getting this pattern. Then we're gonna pull out a pencil and we're gonna widen those grooves. That way we can actually see them and they aren't just kind of getting hidden further in. It also is really nice because it will eventually make it look like tiles for our, like a tile floor or stone tile floor for our dungeon tiles. I do like to run my pencil along the outside edges of all the tiles. That kind of gets rid of the factory edges of the cuts, so it makes them look a little bit more natural. One actually nice thing about using a Olfa knife or a hobby knife to do the cuts for your tiles is it actually makes them look like a little bit more rough-hewn stone. I have to work a little harder when I'm using the hot wire table to make my edges not look so perfect. Once all those are done, we're going to move on to our hallway pieces. Now we've got a couple of each of those that we need to do, and they're just going to be the same way. So we're going to cut it into a 3" by 1", and then a 2" by 4", but all of that stays exactly the same. The process is exactly the same as our 3x3 tiles.
It's definitely worth it for me to mention that when you're doing a project like this where you have to make a whole bunch of basically the exact same tile where I'm just making this shape over and over again, it's always a good idea to remember just keep your head down, push through all of the kind of tedious, boring work, because the good news is that once you make a set like this, it'll be so reusable. You'll be able to use it over and over and over again in the future. So you want to build all the tiles that you'll need so you're not kind of piecing them together over time. Just knock it out. You only have to do it once, and then it's done. So let's get back to making a billion tiles.
All right, so we're going to pull out our tinfoil ball, and now we're going to go through all these tiles and texture them up to make them look like they are rough-hewn stone. All of the upper surface area, we're going to want to roll with the tinfoil ball, and then we're going to re-widen those lines with a pencil. So that will end up making them look like this. Because I'm building the Red Brand Hideout specifically, I'm actually taking the time to count out and make sure that I have enough tiles to make each piece that I need. If you were just making a custom set for yourself that wasn't reliant on making a specific layout, you wouldn't have to do this, but I'm just making sure I've got exactly what I need. All right, and now it's time for the most tedious part but satisfying part of this build, which is gluing on our bricks. So I'm going to be using Eileen's tacky glue here, but you could easily use Elmer's if you wanted. But I'm going to paint that onto the tile in the shape that I want the walls to be. So for this one, it's going to be a corner piece, and I'm going to paint out that exact shape. Then I'm going to take my bricks and just start laying them just all the way across. If something doesn't fit, you can cut a brick, reshape it. That's the nice thing about foam, is you can really play around with them and get them to fit exactly how you have to. And then once you've got all of the bricks laid, you can just move on to the next tile until you got your whole set done. Once you get a tile done with one course of bricks, it'll look something like this. Once you have all of the pieces finished with one course, you're going to want to let them set out to dry. But once they're dry, then it's time to move on to the second course. You're going to want to lay that second course on top in a bricklaying fashion. But as soon as that's done, then you're finished and all your pieces should start to look like this. The second course is just as simple as the first, except you just want to make sure that you offset the upper bricks from the lower bricks. And this is so satisfying. Once you get all of those tiles finished, you get to set them out like this and look at them. There was no reason for me to set out and get this shot other than I just needed the reinforcement to feel like I've got something accomplished after I've spent a few hours knocking all of those tiles out. But once I'm done staring at my pretty work, I'm ready to Mod Podge. So we're going to be using our black Magic Craft base coat here, which is just a 50-50 mixture of matte Mod Podge and black acrylic craft paint. We're going to want to coat all of these pieces top and bottom. This will add strength to them as well as give us our base coat to be ready for paint soon. With all those base coated, it's now time for paint. And I think, in my opinion, one of the worst mistakes you can make on a big project like this is overcomplicating the paint scheme. I'm going with a dark grayish brown as my base tone. Then I'm going to do a kind of mid-tone of a medium gray, and then I'm going to do a highlight of kind of a light gray. The exact colors are not important here. But you just want to do something simple that it doesn't kill you to have to spend, You don't want to be spending an hour on each tile. You'd never get the project done. You just want a paint scheme on these that'll get done nice and quick and will look good on the table. If anything about this paint scheme looks complicated to you, I will tell you it's not complicated, I promise. But if you want to watch a tutorial that goes a little bit more in depth on what I'm doing here, you can check out the Rocks video, which is from the Goblin Era's Ambush series, and I will link that video in the description below. Eventually all your tiles are going to look like this, and you are almost at the finish line. And what we're going to do now is just take a flat black and we're going to paint all the edges of those tiles. This is an optional step. This is absolutely not something that you would have to do. You actually might even like the gray look of the sides of the tiles. It's just something that I've done for a long time with all of my tiles, and I want them to match all the sets that I've built before. So once you're finished, this is what they'll look like, and now we're ready to build a dungeon. All right, and there we have our dungeon tiles. Definitely stick around for next week. We're going to be building the 3x3 cave tiles that are going to lock into this same grid system. It's going to give you a lot of versatility in the future, going from a more finished stonework dungeon to a more natural cave system. If you're liking these videos, leave a like down below, leave me a comment and let me know what you're thinking. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't and you enjoy these videos. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when our videos go live every week, which is on Thursdays. If you head over to DriveThruRPG and you pick out the layout sheet to figure out how you want to lay out this particular dungeon, you can also check out the 2-part adventure that I have. That would mean the world to me. Check it out, run it, let me know what you think. But until next time, I'll be seeing you.